Summit. I hope you enjoyed the first part of the day. Now we go into some really interesting and useful conversations about the future and where we go from now on. Before going to Tanya, let me briefly tell you what happens today so that you see it's a really full day. We had introduction to sustainability from 10, the last part, and then obviously introduction to innovation. From 12:30, we have a conversation in Romanian about risk education and how we can educate ourselves to better understand the risks and to actually take measures to prevent them or to be better prepared. Then a special day from 2 until 7, we have 22 startups from 6 countries pitching for 20,000 euro in our Future Makers incubator. And then from 7:30, the grand final. What happens tomorrow? I think it's also quite interesting for those of you that want to learn more. This is not tomorrow, of course. This is tomorrow. We start at 10 with Lois Damhoff from UNESCO to talk about how we can become futures literate. From 10:30, we go to Paris with David Callis. And then many other events I strongly recommend if you're into food like I am. From 2, we go to San Francisco with Teresa Lieb from Greenpeace. We talk about how future food is or not plant food. And from 2:30, we go to Helsinki with Professor Bodo Steiner from the University of Helsinki. Now, coming back to today and who we are and what we do, I'm super excited to welcome back to Future Summit Tanja Schindler. She's a global futurist. She's vice chair of the Association of Professional Futurists. But before that, mainly, she's co-founder of Future Space, the global community that engages hundreds of foresight and futurists or people that are interested in the future. Tanja, welcome back to Future Summit.
Thank you so much for having me again.
Thank you for coming. So we have a simple topic, but highly complicated to some extent. How do we use foresight in business and how can we help organizations? I'm very happy to tell you, all of you, that we have people from all over the world registered for Future Summit. And we're thankful to all of you that watch in late hours the recordings that we have. So let's start with this thing called foresight. Now, there's a lot of talk, and we also had some sessions in Future Summit about that. I would just start with what is foresight and why should we care as organizations about that?
I think the most important distinction is between foresight and forecasting. Probably all organizations do forecasting in a way that they have their 3 years plan of how they expect their growth and their sales and everything scheduled. And you may even have a best, worst, and a medium scenario for that. But it's total opposite to what we do in foresight. So foresight is not about predicting the future and getting prepared for one future, but rather exploring alternative futures. So it's kind of a brain exercise to train your brain to multiple outcomes of the future. So you're not so surprised, you're not paralyzed, and you remain acting at all time. And the next level, then you do a further step and you define what is the preferred future you want to create. And of course, there will be uncertain events that put you on detours on that. But this preferred future is very important to put your long-term strategy so you know what decisions you're making today that have impact and creating the future that you actually want. And the last part I say about foresight is my favorite term is you have to learn to dance with the uncertainty. So you can prepare for multiple alternative futures, but still the future will be different. So we need to learn that we dance with whatever comes, we feel the rhythm, and we can handle that term of uncertainty because we still have our fixed star, our preferred future, where to go. So it's all about exploration.
I think it's also about exploration, but in the same time, I know you have a metaphor that says something like you can't really go into space without a helmet or a suit. So we go into the future completely or utterly unprepared, mostly because we don't know that we can or could prepare. Another question is why should organizations care about foresight and why would they be interested in learning more about it?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, my other favorite method or metaphor that you just mentioned is that. So imagine really your organization would get the mission to go to space, which is a highly uncertain and complex space. So what would you do? You would come up with somehow of an expedition, a way of how you would enter space. You would get a great team and build a community within that team, or a team building. You would train that team and certainly on the skills to go into space. And then you would have a goal, a star you may want to explore, or at least different maps of a planet where you want to head first. And this exactly is about the future. So why would you as an organization send all your employees unprepared into the future without having the right skills, the mindset, or the tools to find more insights and more reasons to make better decisions in the present? So it is really not a task that is only for strategy. I believe every employee in the organization needs to understand that. And at the end, futures thinking really encourages and empowers your purpose in your organization and why you exist.
Yeah. There's a in the 90s and even before that, foresight was seen as something just for the executive board or the CEO. And what you're saying is that we can and could use foresight at all levels, so everyone can contribute. But what's the best way to get it started? You have a team of 200, I don't know, 300 people. What are some of the steps that take 6 months in advance? How should you use foresight? Because it's
Mm.
quite obvious why.
I think the advantage is that I worked really on both sides. So I started in a corporate business, and we really also tried there to set up foresight, and it was part of this corporate strategy. But by that, you're at the end 2, 3, maybe 10 people as a small department convincing 40,000 people to think about the future that happens in 3 to 10 years instead of the product launch that is next week. So what we need to do is to show that even for the product manager, and I used to be a product marketing manager as well, to know that foresight helps you actually launch your product next week better, because you're already thinking maybe how to improve or where to actually sell it or in which direction you want to develop it further. So instead of having one core team that is only working with the board or the executive directors, you really need 1 to 2 people in every department being interested in that. And I know the start is very hard, because I've been that person, and you feel you're the crazy person thinking long term and now need to convince the others. And this is why I believe that really community is important, and the reason at the end why I also founded Future Space, to say this is a safe space where you can come and learn how other organizations did implement it, which is exactly the process, and how can you strengthen and convince people on that. And even better is that we're now starting to run with organization workshops where we co-develop different topics. So for example, we just started with Mondelez working with the future of food and snacking. So they bring in their employees, and we bring in over 1,000 people from all over the world with different views on the food of snacking, and then UX explore. And those are insights that most likely the product managers and others cannot gain that easily. And it's a different thinking that you approach. And by that, then they start loving doing foresight, because they see how to implement it in their daily operations.
Yeah, can you give us some examples of foresight tools or methodologies that everyone could understand, and even everyone could practice at home or in the office?
Yeah, one of my favorite tools is the Futures Wheel, where you really think about consequences. I always say, if we had that tool in the 90s, we may not have introduced plastic bottles at all, because it starts with what is your product or idea or your strategy, but it really works with products as well. And you put it in the middle, and then you think about different categories. You can either use a steep category and think what would be the impact on society, on technology, on others, or you can more be creative about the categories and say, how would people use that? How would people think about using this tool? And then the very important part is that you not start with one round and just think, okay, what impact will my product have? But then you think, what impact of that impact will my product have? So you go to the second and third layer of implications. And this is where it gets interesting, because at the end, then you think, what is the 10-year impact of the strategy or the product that I set out into the market today? and may also what is about the disposal of that. How do I create it back into sustainability? What's the circular economy model of that? So really forcing yourself to think not just about the launch, but maybe also about what is it the product is out there, what's happening.
Yeah, we've had a lot of sessions in Future Summit about sustainability, sustainable business making, circularity, also in our online class on sustainability and sustainable business making. And a lot about the future is connected to sustainability to a large extent. Now, what would you recommend an organization, a company or an NGO, or why not, to start with? What is the first thing that they should do to see if they can, or not if they should, but if they can use foresight on their own, or they would need to go to somebody else that really knows how to do it?
One other exercise I do is where you actually compare your current roadmap, your technologies with what is happening on the market. So all of you know trends, and trends is the great foundation to start foresight. I don't say that is foresight. It's for me the foundation to start the exploration of going further, because trends are still something that you see most in the present and you recognize them. So the interesting part is, once again, you explore the long-term impacts of trends and see in which directions they're actually heading. So if you have some market trends and then you look what of the products are actually fulfilling that market trend and what technologies are behind that within the products and also in our pipeline, and is this actually matching? And by this you can straight see, are you actually developing stuff for now, or is it a little bit future ready on that? And then when you're done that with trends, you start with trends making patterns. So you combine trends and think, what would this go into 5 and 10 years? And do we still have products that line up? And I mean, in the automotive industry, we have still very long development cycles, not for all the technologies being used, but for the whole car. So you really have to think at the end, what is the car you want to create in 10 years? And you start now. So we rather, explore and combine and see what product, market, technology roadmap we have into the future.
Yeah. Do you have any positive examples of local authorities or governments that succeed in implementing foresight strategies?
I believe we're still finding the right way, and it's mostly really about this engagement that we don't see it on the executive level, and we are bringing to that. But I recently did the EU project, so besides doing the APF and the future space community, I also worked for the EU Commission, and we did a project about stories from 2050. And I think this was the first approach also for governmental institutions to reach out to society and say, how do you think about the stories of the future 2050? And we really created fictional as well as some plausible stories to expand and to start a conversation. So foresight for me is even to start a conversation and having a conversation about the future. This is the first step. And then you more tools you use, you can get more strategic, and you can find your pathway into the future.
Yep. We have a session following this on risk education, which in which we mainly talk about how we can support people in understanding better the future, right? And what are some of the risks that these lie, and what can you do? Now, with this in mind, what is the question, or what are some of the questions that you think organizations are not asking themselves, or ways of asking other questions to actually get better prepared for the future? Because the future is, there's threats, risks, and opportunities. So, if we would focus on risk, what are some of the questions that we're not asking ourselves?
Well, the first question I always ask, what must happen to kick you out of business? So really try to destroy your own business model and think what must happen, which competitors may arise, which a natural disaster. So what's the worst thing that can happen, and to do that. And from that, you can also then start about some strategies and some ideas to prevent that, or to see if this is even a pathway you have to go. The second question is, ask yourself what your core competencies is, not what your core business is. Because of your core business can really change from the external factors. such as natural disasters, pandemics, economic stuff, where you think about what are the core competencies, and then look what are future challenges. So the UN SDGs, the Social Development Goals, are a really good hint into where is really a solution needed for. And then ask yourself, what are the competencies that you have and which solutions you may tackle, because those problems won't disappear that easily. And they also need to survive a crisis, because we still need to solve them afterwards, after crisis even more. So it's sometimes hard, because I know we're so connected to the products that we create, but really don't think too much about your core business and core products, but rather what are the strengths within the team, the technologies maybe that you have, and what else could you use it for in order to stay future relevant.
Yeah. Let's pick an example of a company in product development. So it's not a service necessarily, but it builds stuff. And this company is a bit forward-looking, wants to become more sustainable, or wants to be part of the circular economy. How would a sort of a program or a foresight-based program look in this case? Is there can you learn it in 1 week? Do you need 6 months? What's the best process that you would recommend?
It's a continuous learning, and that's why I say it's maybe quite easy to learn some of the tools and even self-study. I taught myself at the beginning how to do scenarios, so I think everyone can start the tools, but what you really can't learn that easily is how to frame the process. So what are the three tools that I combine to get in the end into the answers that I want? Because framing a foresight or a futures process is really about opening the space to exploration, but then nailing it down. So at the end, you have a preferred future or some recommendations for your strategy. And this is, I think, something you need to learn over time, and the more projects you do. And the best here is really to collaborate and work with people who've done this a lot, either through communities or consultancies. I don't really like the name consultants. For me, the future of consulting is partnership. So every client project that I do is about, you're probably the subject matter experts. I come in and ask you the right questions that you have to rethink your business and think differently. And I think this is really the goal. Surround yourself with people that think differently and come from different angles, so you can explore multiple different futures. So you can never do it alone, and probably never only inside your own company. So you need to connect to people outside your business and your industry to see where the world is to be explored.
Yeah. What are some of the free tools or the resources that you would recommend people to go to understand just a bit what foresight is, and then perhaps to go deeper?
Yeah, I mean, there are multiple. What we try in Future Space is really to also highlight what are some of the key methods. We also recommend some training partners, and then we run those methods. So you learn how to facilitate them, so you can actually facilitate them within your organization. There's a whole other encyclopedia of foresight methods with the Millennium Project. For example, they have a lot of bunch of that. And there are many, many books out there. But with books, I really feel you're missing the part of, or even with self-training, you're really missing the part what's happening once you do this in a diverse team. And there are certain questions you may need to provoke and need to answer to get to better results. And this is what we like to train within our community.
Yeah. Since our previous conversation in Future Summit last year in November, some things have changed at the global level, and some things have not really changed. Looking back to what you thought 2021 would be, is there something that happened this year that surprised you at global level or European level?
I think it's hard to surprise me, because I really love this uncertainty, and I think my mind goes way crazier than that. So beginning of the pandemic, I was all in the zombie apocalypse and thought, what if we really had I don't know, civil wars, if there were rivalries and others. And I think it happens because I also, just before the pandemic, was in Paris. and there was the strike on public transport. So everyone was in the street, and it was really, really hectic and crazy. And then 4 months later, it was the opposite, and everyone was calm. So my mind can be crazy to say, okay, where can this go? But also, what opportunity is this? So I did the last talk I did, I think it was last year, about actually the catalyst of the pandemic and how we can use it is, was the normal really so good? So if we're going back, many people were not able to do a remote work or work from home. In Germany, we have still very large issues with mass slavery, mass production of meat. This came up because of the pandemic. Then people showed and so, well, there are too many people working in a small place on meat production. Maybe that's a problem, not only the pandemic. So what I say is, instead of trying to go back normal, saying what has evolved, what issues kind of like came from the crust because of that pressure of the pandemic, and how can we make a better and create a more sustainable future by really challenging the way that we're doing things. Business travel, I think, of course, Zoom or other calls, video calls, also use resources. But I think there's a new way of connecting with people globally to be more open to voices that haven't been heard, and to really challenge the way that we've done things, not saying the old normal. Let's create a new normal where everybody is more included, and hopefully we also are more sustainable.
Yeah. If you were to send yourself a message now to your future self 10 years from now, what would you say?
Now to I always go back, saying what the 10-year would probably tell me. For now into the future, I mean, future is my passion. I just said it. I do it now almost 24 hours a day. I say probably when I'm sleeping, I dream about futures. So the message that I send is maybe I congratulate myself in a way that futures is now in every mindset, and everyone understands that there is not one future and multiple futures, and that's our chance to still create that and start being passive about that. And my future me to me was probably say to not give up and to really spread this foresight spirit even more, to empower people to take responsibilities within their actions, but also within their companies, to say, what is the future we want to create? What is the future we want to build? And our employees are proud to work with us, and our customers are happy because we're really solving a problem and a cause. And it's not all about growth and shareholders and profit, but rather about creating a better society and a better environment and a healthier planet also for the next generation.
Yeah. So you talked about profit, people, and planet, and that's one of the key elements of Future Summit. Don't forget, tomorrow evening from 6:30 in Romanian this time, we talk about people, planet, and profit from a city perspective. We try to see how we can reimagine 3 cities in Romania with the mayor of Brașov, a businessman from Iași, and a creative and community manager from Timișoara. I think it's not just what we do with our businesses and organizations, but what we do with the cities that we live in, either as citizens or policymakers or whatever we might be. And you wanted to say something?
I just say exactly this. I think there's responsibility within us all. So from citizens, from the governments, from policies, the same as from consumers, from businesses, and also from the policies or the government. So it cannot only be that consumers need to change their behavior. It also needs to be that companies take on more responsibility on what they want to create and stand for. And I think with both of them, with both of those forces, we can really make change. Because we know it's hard to change as consumers. We want to buy more organic and maybe healthier stuff, but even with food, but then we still at one end crave things and buy, and we have those habits to go back. So I think if we have those mindset shifts on both sides, this is really where the action happens, and where we drive change. Otherwise, we're only waiting for the other party to start.
Yeah, true. Great. Short and to the point. Thank you so much. Let's just rehearse what we've learned. If you want to use foresight in your business, well, the first question is not why you should start using Foresight, but when. And then you move to how and whom, but whom should to some extent involve everyone that is part of the team and everyone that is not part of the team, or as many different views on where your product is heading, your cause, or your city for that matter. I want to thank you, Tanja, very, very much for coming back to Future Summit. And we hope to see you also in person. Let me take this opportunity to publicly announce, but whispering, that we hope to organize Future Summit offline next year, 20 to 22 of May, 2022, of course, in Bucharest, and not just in Bucharest. Now, on that note, thank you so much, Tanja. We take a 5-minute break and then we go to risk education. Tanja?
Thank you. It was great being here. And yeah, you all have the chance to still explore all of our content on Future Space till the end of the year for free. Our main community is for free. Just some of the premium content will be starting next year. And since you all know Mighty Networks from this platform, just search for another Mighty Network with this Future Space. And yeah, happy to see you around there as well. And let's create some better futures together. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone.
You too.